My congratulations with this upcoming release. And first and foremost, I would like to ask, so it's released on the Valentine's Day. Yes. So how did you come
Yeah.
up with this date?
I can't remember honestly. I think it just started from us wanting to play a show on Valentine's Day and have that be something we can build and hopefully make an annual thing over the years. And coincidentally, Valentine's Day this year is also on a Friday,
Mhm.
which Fridays are typically album release days. Like all albums come out on Fridays. And so the timeline just worked really well from when we delivered the album and the first single coming out. It just felt like a good date at the time. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Aren't you? Oh, you also have a furry
Yeah.
buddy with you. That's awesome. Aren't you afraid of a tiny rivalry? Because I know a couple of albums for sure of your colleagues that are going to be released on Valentine's Day.
Right. I mean, there's no way of really knowing that. We scheduled this back in July, I think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so when you're thinking 6, 7 months ahead, which is
Um,
typically when albums are scheduled for release, you have no idea what else is going to come out that day.
mhm.
And given that everything comes out on Fridays, every Friday is going to have releases. There's no way of knowing. I don't see it as competition or anything like that. Like we're a new band, we're just starting out. This is our first album. It's not like we're going to be hitting the top 10 Billboard and we have like super competition for those slots, like I'd
Mhm.
be more worried if we were a bigger band and we had that, who's going to get the most streams. Not to sound defeatist, I'm just being realistic here. Like I think it's more about building up to the album with the singles and getting more people on board. Of course, first week numbers matter for the actual album release, but I just don't think it matters as much as an already big established band.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's a tiny element of, I think it's called gambling. Yes, like
Yeah.
curious how it's about to happen in the end.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we
Uh,
don't know. We're just make music and release it. We
uh-huh.
have no idea. Right?
Yeah. So the album is called Cross Me Twice, and if I may say so, the album cover is incredibly magnetic, very metaphoric, and not very optimistic. So,
Thank you.
what's behind the cover, and how does it interlace with the title of the album?
Yeah, it was the album cover was a result of Robbie sitting with the lyrics one night and just making a bunch of sketches based on the lyrics. And he made a bunch of sketches, and then out of all of them, this was the one we were gravitating more towards. Just the idea of having something beautiful like a vase with flowers being destroyed by a bat with chains around it, and the bat has like a knife
Mm-hmm.
by the handle. So that like depicts that like when you cause harm to something or someone else, you're also inflicting harm upon yourself. I just feel like it embodies a lot of what the album is about, with a lot of interpersonal relationships and a lot of, putting your trust and faith in the wrong people. I think it's a really like spot on metaphor for what the album as a whole is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, will there be any connections or Easter eggs with the previous releases, Kings Today and Fools Tomorrow?
How so? Like thematically, you mean?
Yes,
Or
yes, yes. So I'm always looking for some concepts everywhere for some reason. And
right.
yes, so for me, previous releases were so vivid and authentic in their own way, and it had a
Hmm.
story. I was very, very captivated by the idea of previous releases that
Hmm.
it's how you said it's not political, but it's social. And we talked about
Yeah.
villains a lot about this
Yeah.
villainosity in I mean people in society, all these interactions, relationships, and I for some reason caught this vibe and for me it was even stronger and even more melancholy, if I may say so, in Cross Me Twice. I listened to the
Hmm.
album, of course, so this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just curious. So, is it just me, and it's only by the sense? So, are there really some connections with the previous releases?
I mean, I don't think it was intentional. I think this album is a lot more emotional, hence why you say melancholic. Because with our previous releases, we were more like positivity, talk about difficult
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but always keep it positive, which I think Cross Me Twice is still 80% that, but there's that 20% that gets a little deep and a little dark and maybe doesn't resolve. So you feel that sadness and
Mm-hmm.
that anxiety maybe a little bit more. So I really think we just weren't afraid to explore that dynamic range, both musically and lyrically. That okay, if we're feeling something, we're just gonna put it down, with no real like barriers or anything like, oh, this is what the EPs sounded like, therefore we have to continue down that same exact
Uh-huh.
path, you know. There was a lot of freedom in that. But because, you know, we're the same songwriters and we're the ones that write the lyrics, of course, I think there's always going to be a little bit of overlap of maybe touching upon a subject that you've already touched upon and just adding
Mm-hmm.
to it. Because we're the same people and we still feel the same way about certain things. So maybe that's why you're feeling that
Mm-hmm.
connection, which I think is normal and I think is it attributes to the identity of the band.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you want album to album to maybe explore a little bit more and experiment, but you don't want to lose that, you know, the root of what makes you you and the identity that you have. So yeah, I guess that answers that.
So, what also made me curious about the album is that I found a couple of songs. I identified them in my head as echo songs because they were
Mm.
kind of continuations of,
Yeah,
like, for example, Throwback and Here Comes the Memories. So
yeah.
what's the concept behind this?
Yeah, I like to I call them interludes.
Ah, uh-huh.
Yeah, the album has two interludes, and that was we had the 8 songs and they were done. And then we were kind of faced with the decision, do we write more songs or do we create kind of like interludes or intros or whatever, remixes? And I think I was the one or one of the people in the band that didn't really want to add more songs to the album, given how there's been a shift in the industry and everything is so single focused and, you know, full 10-track albums are kind of a rarity. Unless the band is already established, of course, and they know that their core audience is going to listen to the whole thing. You see a lot of albums that are like under 10 songs and have that, like interludes and remixes and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So the idea was like, okay, we have the 8 songs, maybe we'll do 2 interludes. And what ended up happening was that kind of fell on me. Nobody else was really taking initiative or trying to figure out what that could be. I was working on the sound design for the album at that time. And so I took bits and pieces and then I created whole new tracks, based on what was there. So I would take, say, the lyrics or the vocals from one song, like you mentioned, Throwback. And I was like, okay, with Throwback, I feel like it could be really cool if I create this interlude that constantly builds and builds and builds. And so I did that for the 2 interludes on the album.
Yeah, so I, for some reason, didn't think about them as interludes. Maybe I was sent the album in a like mixed order of the songs, and it was
No, no,
very,
very
very, very
normal.
surprising. But it's a very
Yeah,
interesting concept that I must say that I've never.
yeah.
I don't remember when I heard last time the album that had anything like this. That's why it caught my attention.
Yeah. I think that that comes from my love for prog music.
Mm-hmm.
Prog met like a lot of bands that I listened to growing up did that where you know you heard this chorus in a different song and then they take it and they put it in a different
Uh-huh.
song in a different way, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I always love that, and I love that it helps kind of reinforce how you already feel about a song. So say you're listening to the album you hear the song, and then 5 tracks later, you hear part of that song again, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
stay with you, I think, a little bit longer. And that was my intent with the 2 interludes. One of them is at the start of the album, and it's kind of a foreshadow of songs that follow afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas the second interlude is towards the end of an album, and it's a repeat of something you heard previously. So I wanted them to be like, okay, there's 2 interludes, but they have 2 different vibes. They're 2 different songs. I didn't want it to be the same concept. And lyrically and melodically, I did choose parts of songs that I felt stronger about. I was like, oh, I want people to hear this again because I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Throwback is one of the strongest songs on the album. It like
Oh,
pierced my mind.
thank you.
My favorite actually. So
Oh,
I was
that's
very interested in finding this like another piece of this song and
yeah,
made me question.
that's
So
cool. I'm
I
happy to hear
usually
it.
use my position as a journalist to ask about my favorite songs on the
Yeah,
album.
yeah, yeah.
Throwback. So can you tell me some backstory about creating of the song?
Yeah, Throwback is actually the song that transformed the most throughout the demo process. The instrumental was completely different at the start. It was just like a rock song all throughout. There was no like 808s, hip hop beats on there
Mhm.
or no sound design. It was just a straight up rock song with guitar. And from that, when Robbie and I were working on the vocals and the lyrics, I think we wrote the chorus first, yes. But the chorus, I wasn't too happy about how the chord progression was. So I pulled out my piano and wrote a whole new chord progression, wrote a whole new chorus, and sent that over and got that transposed to guitar. So essentially the entire song changed. It went through different phases. And then we had the verses at the start, we wrote those same rap verses over something upbeat and happy. So our inflection was upbeat and happy. We were kind of talking about like something sadder over something happy. But then that changed as well. We deleted all that and just did sound design and then gave it a more melancholic, kind of nostalgic vibe in
Mhm.
the performance. So it's very interesting to see how far that song came and what it turned out to be. And thematically, it's essentially just about our childhood, mine and Robbie's childhood. He wrote a verse about how he grew up. I wrote a verse about how I grew up. Of course, they're quite short verses. There's not a lot of detail, but it was just like, okay, what's coming to mind, when you're thinking about your childhood? And we wrote that. And then the chorus is about being an adult and thinking about those childhood moments. Here come all the memories reeling in. Reeling in, it's like a metaphor for like a video reel. Because I had this fond memory of like the VHS tapes that we
Yes.
had from our childhood at least. Now I know everything's digital, but when we were growing up,
Mhm.
my mom had a video camera and would keep all that, and we had a bunch of tapes with labels on them. So that's essentially the song, and I feel like the verses give our perspective to it, but then the chorus is really open for hopefully anyone to be able to connect and feel their own memories from their childhood.
Yes, very powerful song indeed.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so thank you very much
of
for
course.
sharing. And I know it's always, I mean, asking this is always like asking which child, if you have children, you love the most. But what
Yeah.
songs on the album are your favorite?
That's been really hard to, I guess it's always shifted throughout the release, and then when we film music videos, it makes you like love a song even more.
Hmm.
Um, so it's been a little tough. I think it's too soon to tell until we have like all the songs done and released. But definitely in this carousel is up there, as well as Follow Me.
Hmm.
And then it's hard, like I really love Masquerade Parade and what we did with the video and it being heavy and like unpredictable, but then I do also really love Throwback for the message. So It's really especially tough with this album compared to the EPs because I feel like it really goes into different genres and different moods for different occasions. So like some days I might be feeling like this song's my favorite, but then other
Hmm.
days I'm feeling like a different one, you know. So it's really hard, but I would say in general the more emotional songs are my favorite just because I've come to realize I just like really emotional melodic music at the end of the day. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, also my notice that what I noticed is that this album is really more melodic and
mhm.
sad. We've already discussed this. I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned this. And I want to ask, do you agree in general with the idea that sadness is for progress and happiness is for recharging the batteries? Like a creative person, do you agree with this concept?
Interesting. I never heard that before. It puts things into perspective. I think depending on the personality, yeah, absolutely. Because when you're feeling distressed about something, you know, you're down in the dumps, you want to get out of that, right? So
Mhm.
I can see how that relates to progress, but I think everyone works at their own pace. Sometimes you just need to stay in that for a little bit until you can pull yourself out of it, I guess. But that is the goal. You can't stay there forever. And then happiness. I find the word happiness such an interesting word because it's like it's very hard to define for me. Like I feel like I can define sadness much easier than I can define happiness because I feel like happiness can be elusive to a lot of people. Like they think, oh, if I have this or if I accomplish this in life, I'm going to be happy.
Mhm.
And that's not very often the case. I feel like it's tied into this like everlasting chase for a lot of people. So it's harder for me to define. Whereas sadness, you know, you definitely know when you're feeling sad. There's no escaping it. So I do think it depends from person to person and each personality type out there. But one thing I will say regarding happiness, I think people do tend to overcomplicate it. So maybe we need to just embrace like moments of joy and just be like, yeah, this is happiness, even if it lasts 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever.
It's necessary not to take these moments for granted for sure
Yeah.
when they happen.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I generally, by the way, want to ask, how do you feel? So you are such an experienced artist, and I will even use the word well-known artist. So how does it feel to release a debut album?
It's strange. I mean, I wouldn't say well known. I mean, I do have some experience in the industry, right? But it's not like I'm super famous or anything like that. But I think even if I were, because I see it with other bands and artists that are huge and they start a side project and it doesn't quite it never has the response that you know what they are known for does have. It's like
Mhm.
starting from scratch essentially, and your position can help like fast track a little bit of that because you know people in the industry or you have fans already from different things that you've done, but it's a whole new thing. And I think that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind when you're starting a new project. It doesn't really matter what you've done before that point because it's still new. And I see it to this day. I'll see people leave comments and just be like, I had no idea like you were still doing music, or this is like the first time I'm hearing this band, or, you know, various comments like that. So it can be a mental struggle in the sense that like you're not continuing from where you left off. Like
Mhm.
it's a whole new thing. You need to treat it as such and work just as hard.
But anyway, I think it's a good challenge.
Yeah, thank you.
In your opinion, what's the difference, the major difference between, let's say, melodic death metal audience,
Hmm.
like you performed in front of with the
Yeah.
artist, and Sixth Sense audience? So it's more like a hardcore new metal audience.
I think people that discover Sixth Sense and really love Sixth Sense, whether they knew me before or not, if they're new fans, I think they're a lot more open-minded which is saying a lot because I already felt that with fans of the Agnes. Like already the Agnes is a band that doesn't really fit in a box, but I think Sixth Sense is even more so that with the dynamics and the really going into all genres. Like you're never gonna have rapping and melodic death metal. You'd get
Yeah.
crucified, you know. So I do think there's a little bit of that, I guess, pretense with melodic death metal fans that yeah, they're a little more open-minded than say other old school bands, but not to the full extent that like new metal fans are or just modern metal fans in general. I'm noticing like with the shows that we just played, the people that are walking up to us after the shows are primarily a younger audience, which I think is great. It's the next generation of fans of metal. So I think that's the biggest difference to me that like they're even more open-minded. They're not thrown off when, let's say, the song goes in a direction that they didn't think it was going to go. Whereas, yeah, I think traditional metal fans they hear the first 30 seconds of a song, they think it's going to go a certain way, and then if the song shifts in a different direction, they don't like it, you know. I personally prefer that because I love music in general. I was never fixated on one genre being the best genre of them all, you know, so I feel glad that I'm creating music that can go in all directions and not feel like it's out of place, at least for us.
Yes, so it's higher level of freedom in the end, apparently.
I think so, yeah. I think so. And there's very much a take it or leave it approach. Like we're not gonna change what we're doing to please anyone because there's so many elements there. Like just the shows we just played. One night I had someone tell me that they love my singing voice and they would love it if I just did a solo singing album. And then night two I had someone tell me hey, could you just scream only? Like anyone can sing. I don't want to hear you sing. I just want to hear you scream. You know what I mean? And it's so I think that's what we're always going to get that because we do so much, people are going to like gravitate towards certain aspects of what we do more
Mhm.
so. But when we find the people that love everything that we do, I think it's an amazing feeling because I gravitate towards open-minded people in general as a
Mhm.
vibe. Like I feel like I can talk to people like that about anything and be accepted. So if we can create a fan base that is also that, I think that's yeah, what more do you want, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. By the way, speaking about freedom and remembering our previous conversation, you mentioned
Mhm.
that you were not planning to release an album until you find the label. So
Yeah.
you found the label.
Yes, yes. So this album is
Congratulations.
coming out. Thank you. Thank you. It's coming out through Earache Records, which are based in the UK, but they have a US store now and like representation in general. That's been a big help, especially with the distribution side and financially helping us, record this album and make music videos and stuff like that. I feel like there's only so far you can go independently especially if you're not, putting all the money in yourself to fund. Music is really expensive. Like I don't know how much people realize this, but from the gear side, like buying everything that you need for studio, for live, and then filming videos and recording music, it can get really, really expensive. So I think that was the biggest help for us this past year, just being able to do the things that we want to do and having that support from a label.
Great. So again, speaking about new metal,
Hmm.
recently Linkin Park made everyone being a little shocked, not only reuniting but
Hmm.
presenting a new singer. So Linkin Park is now a new metal female-fronted band. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, they definitely saw Sixth Sense and they were like, we're gonna do that.
Yeah, sure.
No, we make that joke pretty often because we used to say in like the very first interviews when people were asking us to describe the band, one of the things we would say would be like, imagine Linkin Park if they had a female vocalist. So we make that joke that like, hey, maybe Mike Shinoda saw one of those interviews and was like, yeah, that's a great
Indeed.
idea. Yeah. I think people were surprised, of course. It's Chester was such a big part of the band and identity of the band with his unique voice that it's hard to picture them with anyone else.
Mhm.
And I think I mean I haven't listened to the full album yet. I've heard some of their singles and I've seen some of their live show clips that they put out. I think they were probably weary of getting someone that just sounds exactly like him. Because I feel like bands either go in that direction where they find someone that just sounds exactly like the former vocalist, or the complete opposite. So I think in Linkin Park's case, they were like, they didn't want the comparisons too much. So they're like, let's just go complete opposite, female
Mhm.
voice, just change it all entirely. And at the end of the day, that's their decision. Like, I don't think it's our place as fans and people in general to really judge them for that. Like, you can choose to follow them or not to follow them. I think at the end of the day, to be successful no matter what. I don't see this as a bad thing for I think it's a very good thing for the genre
Mhm.
because they're breathing new life into new metal. They're a genre that not that it was ever forgotten, but with all the reunion bands and all yeah, people coming back and being at the forefront again, it's bringing even more eyes on the genre. So I don't see it as a bad thing. It's not yeah, it's only going to bring more eyes to the smaller bands that are doing this. So I think it's a good thing. And then, yeah, at the end of the day, people can choose if they want to listen and follow them or not. I think they're going to be successful no matter what.
Yes, of course, they are still Linkin Park anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And I saw that argument from someone like they should just start a new band and, call it something else and do this. And it goes back to what I said earlier. If they did, they wouldn't be playing arenas. They would be playing 1,000 cap venues or something. It's crazy how much that brand identity and that name value is important. Like you could have the same lineup, but you just change the band name and people don't care or they never hear about it. So that's my response to that argument that people have said.
Mhm. Final question I'm very, very curious about. It's not really music related, but both you and Robbie have such amazing voices, and I really admire how you both manage to work with your voices. And
Mhm.
I am a massive cartoons fan. So, what do you think? What cartoon character or animation, I mean, anime, classical Disney, would like to give your voice to?
Oh
And
boy.
Robbie.
It's really hard. I think for him, he could pretty much do anything. He's very versatile with his voice acting and like
Mhm.
imitations and accents and stuff like that. I think he can't. The one thing I've heard him like try to do and he can't really do is like the very big authoritative type of voice, like deep sort of like that's not really his thing, but he could do anything else. Like, so I really don't know. You'd have to ask him. Maybe I could tell him on socials if he has a response to let you know, send you a message, because I have no idea what would be like his dream role.
Mhm.
But I can tell you that he can definitely do a lot of different voices. For me, it's kind of hard. I feel like what I would be really, really good at is probably either a very cartoony kind of kid voice,
Uh-huh.
just very high pitched and very fun and bubbly, or a very maniacal kind of like witch voice, like Harley Quinn,
Uh-huh.
like kind of psychotic.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think I have a harder time doing regular voices because, yeah, yeah. It just feels unnatural, but then the other types that I'm talking about, like, well, they're supposed to feel unnatural and over the top and exaggerated. So yeah, I don't know about certain specific characters. It's kind of hard to think. I think, yeah, I would love to maybe one day just voice an original character or something,
Mhm.
you know. Everyone always thinks about the roles that are reprised or, they come back as like remakes or sequels or whatever. But for me, I'm always more interested in like original stories.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I feel like I feel like that would be a cool goal in the future to just voice an original character. And it could be in the video game world, doesn't have to be in
Mm-hmm.
like movie, video game role. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, it would be fun for sure.
Video games is such a, I mean, video games nowadays are such a massive field of creativity and self-expression, and they're like movies now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I've dived recently into the world of computer games. It's a
yeah.
rabbit hole I already regret, but yes, it
Yeah,
would be
once you
nice.
start, you can't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to already say that we are done, but if you wanted to add something.
No, I just that this was a pleasure and thank you for taking the time and thank you for, asking questions that are a little out of the box, just a little different from, typical interviews. It's always a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed the album, and I hope to everyone that's watching, I hope you enjoy the album. Thanks, I guess. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the chat.